All right, we are at the top of our minute past. My name is Sheldon Mills. Thank everybody for joining us. I'm a field marketing manager here at Microfocus, and I'm here with Q Mangus, a solution marketing manager and a subject matter expert on information archiving here at Microfocus. We're going to have a Q&A session today addressing several of the most frequent questions we get regarding information archiving, best practices, and how Retain Unified Archiving can help. I'll be fielding those questions and Q will be answering them. But most importantly, if you have any questions come up as we go through the webinar, please share them with us by using the questions or the Q&A in the chat panel, and Q and I will be sure to watch those and address those. Q?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Welcome, and thanks Sheldon for the introduction. We're really excited to bring this information about archiving and hope you can benefit from what we're going to discuss today. We're happy you could be here.
Thanks, Q. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. We are recording this webinar and we'll send it out to everyone via email, so look for that. Also, we'll probably reference a few things like the Gartner Magic Quadrant, the Infotech vendor landscape, and some other analyst reports about archiving retained. So if you want those, please be sure to let us know and we can get those out to everybody as well. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So, first question, what is archiving? Why should I archive, and how does it affect me?
Great question. This is kind of the baseline of what we're going to be talking about today. Obviously here, I should have shown this slide earlier. This is us, if you didn't know us already. So here's a quick slide of the both of us. But about information archiving, just really quick, I wanted to just make sure we're all on the same page here on what information archiving is, how it can benefit your organization, and then we can go into more information about why and what you should be archiving. But really, an overview of information archiving is this: is traditionally it's been seen as well, archiving has traditionally been about preserving and archiving email. That's how it's been for the past 15 or 20 years that you have a data store of email. You tie to your email system, you take it, you store it, you throw it in a corner, and you kind of forget about it. And this is kind of what we call legacy archiving, and that's the traditional view of what archiving is just an email store that you can say I've checked a box and I've got it and we're good to go. But really, the that email archiving has evolved into what we call information archiving. It's more than just email now. It's really being able to archive all of your electronic communication. That would include your social media data, your mobile communication data, any kind of electronic communication. Any messaging that you're doing for business is something that needs to be archived. And what's interesting is that it's actually moved on to where archiving is more of a living, breathing thing. You can use your information archiving data store to gather important information, to have analytics, and to be able to see what the tone of your company, what's being said, what's being posted on social media. You can see what's going on with initiatives. So that's where archiving has moved from, where it's evolved from just that email archive that you kind of set in the corner and you forget, to where it's now email, social media, mobile, instant messaging, and you have the ability to easily and quickly get to that, to be able to provide insights into what's going on in your organization. And so that's kind of what information archiving is today, is that evolution from just an email data store to now something that you can use to gain insights into your organization.
So, what regulations could affect kind of what and how my organization archives?
So this is something we talk about a lot, is the sense that um, there's a lot of reasons to archive, but regulations is one of the things that, especially if you're in a heavily regulated industry, can really affect you. So here's just a few that could affect you depending on what industry you're in. For example, government has to deal with the Freedom of Information Act. That's both state, local, and federal government has to deal with that. There's state sunshine laws that are similar to the Freedom of Information Act. And what these really state is that citizens and others have the ability to request public information. And as a public entity, you have to be able to provide them, and you have to be able to provide them quickly. And this can really apply to email and mobile and social media communication in the sense that those kinds of communication include important information that can be part of the public record. And so what that means is you need to be able to archive that kind of information and quickly and easily get to it in case of a FOIA request. Um, there's also for schools, you have FERPA, so that's for public schools. They need to be able to, once again, produce information if requested. You have HIPAA and high tech, which deals with healthcare. And basically, it's if you're in healthcare, you know this, that those regulations talk about being able to make sure that personal health information is secure and that it's not communicated in unsecure channels. And and archiving can help you show if if those communications have been happening and give you that oversight. And then probably the highest regulated type of industry would be financial, where you have the Dodd-Frank Act, you have NASD, IROC, SEC, SOX, FINRA, tons of regulations that really state what you should and should not be communicating, how you should be communicating, but it boils down to the fact that you need to have oversight no matter what kind of communication it is. So that's the regulations that could affect you. Now, and this is depending on the industry. Now, one thing to take note of is that every organization, no matter what industry you're in, you're kind of subject to what the courts say. And in North America, especially in the United States, you have the federal rules of civil procedure, which really say that if you're involved in litigation, you need to be able to produce communication data. So it started off by saying that you need to be able to produce email that would be pertinent to a court case, but now social media has the same weight as email and mobile communication as well. So that's something to take note of and be aware of, that you need to be able to have your communication data archived, and you need to be able to get to it. That's kind of what all these regulations boil down to, is it needs to be producible and searchable, and it needs to be archived in a central archive.
Awesome. So again, back to the why. Like, why should I archive?
So just a couple of quotes here. There's obviously many reasons, and we kind of touched on that. There's this idea of regulations. We touched on that. So one thing to take note of is recently Gartner stated that 75% of global companies will be involved in, either litigation or maybe an audit that will make you have to do discovery or e-discovery. And so that means you need to be able to produce that information, as I stated. If you're going to be involved in an audit or litigation, you better be able to get to your data, right? The other thing is this idea that your digital data is growing. It's a rate of about 40 to 60% each year that data that's being stored is growing. Well, what an archive can do for you is it can actually reduce that amount of data. So let's just take, for example, in an email system. If you send out an email to 20 people and it has an attachment, the way that most email systems work is that message that's being sent out to 20 people, it's being stored 20 times, and the attachment is being stored 20 times. And think of how many emails are being sent per day to how many people. So your data storage just grows just from email. Well, with an archive, like Retain, and we'll talk more about this, it can take those messages off of your email system, compress them, and store them in single instant storage. So now those 20 emails that are sent out, it's only stored once along with the attachment, and then there are pointers that point back to that message so that each person can still find it in the archive. But now think about that. Your data store has shrunk significantly the amount of data that you need to store because of an archive that's pulled it off of the live server, um, and reduced the size that it's been, of of it by doing single instance storage and by compression, and then of course it's indexed to be able to quickly and easily get to it. So those are two major factors. It's that being able to be ready for litigation or an audit and regulation compliance, being able to manage your data, and then there's another thing too, and this goes along with the data store, is that by archiving your data, you have oversight. Um, which is really important, but it also makes your systems run better. Um, for example, on an email system, it doesn't matter what system you're running, if you pull those messages off, so say you're archiving and everything older than, say, 30 days is now pulled off of the live system and put into the archive, well, think how much better your email system is going to run because it's not bogged down with all this data. So that's another thing, is just being able to, extend your investment, whether that's an on-prem or a cloud email system. It's going to run better, so the life of your investment is going to be pushed out, and your organization is going to be more productive. So those are some reasons really why you should be archiving.
So we got the why. How about what, like the what? What should my organization be archiving when it comes to electronic information?
So this was a recent survey that was done, by Osterman Research, just kind of showing what most organizations are currently archiving. It's about a year or so old, maybe two, but the data is still relevant in the sense that most organizations are and understand the need to archive email. So that obviously is the thing that everyone needs to be archiving. But what a lot of organizations are not archiving is instant messaging, Facebook, other social media, and mobile messaging. And so that's kind of the gap, right? The gap between what should be and what actually is being archived. So the reason I bring this slide up is that this kind of gives you a good summary of what you should be archiving. You need to be archiving your email, you need to be archiving your mobile communication, and then any social media accounts for your organization, any employee accounts that are being used to communicate in an official manner. So if you have employees that have social media accounts that are being used to communicate with employees or customers, that's something that should be archived as well. So the what should you be archiving? You need to be archiving all email, the attachments that are along with those emails, calendars, appointments, basically anything in your email system. You need to be archiving social media, and mobile communication that's done for business communications.
Perfect. We actually have a question having to do with the next part already through. So the question is do you have any advice for archiving mobile devices, especially around BYOD? We actually have a question here asking how mobile is captured, and does it capture all calls or just designated calls?
So let me touch on the advice for mobile first, and then we can touch on how Retain works, maybe a little further down on um, how Retain works. So, but I can definitely touch on that. So, when it comes to mobile, as we know, mobile devices are everywhere, right? You probably have a number of mobile devices in your organization that your employees are using. You may have corporate issued devices, but more than likely you have a situation where you're allowing your employees to bring their own mobile device. Um, and that makes things a little different. Obviously, if it's a corporate issue device, you have complete control over that device. You can archive everything that's on there. Um, if it's bring your own device, now what do you do, right? What, how do you deal with somebody's own personal device? Well, what I would suggest, and the best thing to do, would be to be able to have a policy that states what an employee can and cannot do with their mobile device, whether that's corporate or personal device. And then that policy needs to have technology to back it up. So you need to be able to have oversight of mobile communication. So the best way to do that, and I think this answers the question here, the other question is to have a situation where you have like a dual persona. And what dual persona does is it allows you to use the native dialer. So let's just take for iPhone, for example. You can use iMessage and the dialer that comes with the phone, to call, to place text messages, etc. And that stays personal. Well, with dual persona, it places a separate app on your phone to be able to have business calls. And so those phone calls that are done via that app are logged and archived, and now you have oversight. And then any text messages that are done via that app are also done that way. And so what's great about this situation is that the personal items stay personal, and then the business items are archived, and you have oversight over that. And I'll touch more on exactly how Retain does that, but that's really what the best advice I would have for you for mobile archiving is to make sure that you have a policy, that you have the technology to give you oversight on that policy.
Perfect. All right, before we get into the nuts and bolts of how, also kind of the what should you be doing, what about social media, organization social media account? How do you handle that?
So once again, I would take and say, first and foremost, and I know I'm probably beating this drum pretty loudly, but you need to have a policy. The policy for mobile needs to include information about mobile. Then you also need something about social media. Can your employees use social media at work? How can they use social media to communicate with your customers, or can they even do that at all? That's all up to you to set. But that's something that you need to have, is you need to have that policy. And then of course that policy needs to have technology to back it up. So that may sound like I just said that, but it's the same type of idea. And so, in the very least, what you need to do is you need to archive all of your corporate social media accounts. You need to be able to go back and see what you posted, what's been communicated, what the tone is. Then you need to be able to archive any employee social media that's being used in an official manner. Like I said a little earlier, so say you have an employee that's communicating with your customers or with other employees on social media, you need to be able to have oversight on that. And then another thing too that's really important is being able to have alerts for keywords, questions, and other information. Um, and that's important for engagement, right? So you need to be able to have an alert if somebody goes to your corporate social account, puts in certain keywords, asks certain questions, or maybe has some personal identifiable info. So you can answer questions, that you can engage with certain keywords, and that you can make sure that that kind of information that you don't want on there isn't on there. And that's going to help you engage better. It's going to also help you stop inappropriate content. So that would be kind of some advice for social media and what you should be doing there.
Perfect. So let's get into I guess, the nuts and bolts and how Retain can solve all these problems, right? So what does Retain archive?
And then, oh, missed that slide, but yes, this is something that I harped on a lot, right? Being able to have policies and technology that back that up. Okay, so yes, let's jump into Retain Unified Archiving, how it works. So at the highest level, I love this circle because it kind of gives you a good view of really what Retain is. So Retain, we call it a unified archive. And what we mean by unified archive is that we take and we support multiple email systems, social media, and mobile simultaneously, and it's all into one central or unified archive. So we'd tie directly to the email system, we'd pull down email, we'd tie to social media and we'd pull that down, and mobile, and we'd put that all into that central archive. And then that archive is accessible. We make it easy for you as an administrator to be able to access the entire archive, and you can give other named users access. So say an auditor or a legal team, they can access the archive, and then we allow end users to access their own personal archive, and they can access that via a web interface that we have, an email plugin that's directly in say on Outlook or on GroupWise. There's a little plugin there, so you can access the archive directly from the email client. We also give a mobile app so that the archive can be accessed via the mobile device. And then there's an offline viewer to be able to access it and cache information, and be able to hand that off to outside teams to be able to view that archive, even if they're not online, or even if they don't have full rights to that archive. You can do a search and get a subset of that archive and hand it off. The other thing we like to talk about is intelligent archiving. So we tie directly to the email system as an example and would make sure that everything is archived, that you don't lose anything, um, and that nothing can be deleted off of the system until it's archived. And then finally, one real big thing that makes us, I should say, retain different from other archiving systems is that we have built-in e-discovery. So you don't have to, if you go with retain, everything's archived into that central archive. Um, and we have the tools for you to be able to quickly and easily search, place litigation holds, export to PDF or PST, and be ready for litigation or for audits. And those tools are all included with Retain. You don't have to go out and get a third-party solution to be able to search and perform that e-discovery. It's all built in. And administrators have access to that, other named users have access to that for the entire account, and then you can even give your end users access to be able to search their own personal archive and, let's say, like restore an email back to the live inbox if you grant them those rights. Also, with eDiscovery, there's the ability to tag messages and for to be able to search those tags later on. So that's a little bit about kind of an overview of Retain as a unified archiving solution, is that it supports all of those platforms in one central archive, and then it has those built-in e-discovery tools to be able to help you comply with regulations and manage your data.
Perfect. So let's piece this out. Let's start with email. So how does Retain work with email, Office 365, Exchange, Gmail, GroupWise, all of those?
That's great. So one thing with Retain email archiving is that we support mixed messaging environments, and it's simultaneous support. So the supported solutions, our email platforms, are Office 365, Exchange, Gmail, GroupWise, of course, IBM Notes, and Bloomberg Professional. And along with Office 365 and Exchange, we also provide support for Skype for Business, or Link as it was previously called. And what we do is we integrate directly with the email system. So for Office 365 and Exchange, we tie directly to the email server using impersonation or the Microsoft Recoverable Items folder. Um, or journaling, depending on how you want to do that. But the advantage there is that we make sure that nothing is lost and nothing can be deleted before it's archived. With Gmail, we tie directly to the Gmail system. We don't use an SMTP forwarding type thing. No, it's a direct integration. In fact, recently Gartner in the Magic Quadrant for enterprise information archiving stated that Retain is one of the few solutions that offers that native integration with Gmail. And we're talking enterprise level Gmail, right? The G Suite, or it used to be called Google Apps, to be able to pull down the email messages from that solution. And then, of course, we tie directly to GroupWise. We have great integration there to be able to pull down all email attachments, calendar items, folders, appointments, tasks. All that information that's in the email system for any email system is pulled directly into Retain. And then we also work with IBM Notes and Bloomberg Professional to pull those messages into Retain as well. And one great thing, and I'll show this later on, is that in Retain, the folder structure is replicated so it looks familiar to your end users, so that when they go in there, they'll be able to see their folders. They'll be able to see the messages in the folders, so they're easy to browse that. They can actually browse their archived email, which is great. And then, as I talked a little bit before, is there's that email plugin. And so by being able to have simultaneous support of these messages, of these email systems, you can be archiving, say you're running Exchange today, you can archive that, and later down the road you move to, say, Gmail, we can archive that as well. Or I know this is pretty common in like universities, that they may be running like Office 365 for their employees and Gmail for students. You could archive both. Um, And the other thing is that if you ever have to migrate your email system, which we understand that people move from email systems quite often, because Retain archives it in a platform agnostic format, and it can support multiple systems. You could be archiving your current email system today, deploy your new email system, and tie it to Retain, and now it's archiving there. And now all your historic email is in Retain, and your current email is also in Retain, so you don't have to try and have to run two systems at the same time. That's another great value proposition for Retain, is that the ability to migrate email systems as well. So that's how Retain works for email, being able to tie directly to those email systems and have mixed message environment support. Here's an example of what I was talking about, is being able to replicate that folder structure. Here's an archive. This is, I think this is a view of my archive in Retain. And you can see that the messages are in there, that my folder structure is replicated, and then I could browse from there. Here's an example of the email plugin for an Outlook client, where they can go and directly launch Retain directly from the email system. And then also with the Outlook plugin in particular, messages can be cached. So if that needs to be viewed offline, a user can do that. So that's kind of what a quick summary of the email portion of Retain and how that works and the systems that are supported.
Perfect. So let's jump into the mobile then. How does mobile archiving work with Retain, and some examples there?
Perfect. And this will, I think I'll be able to answer that question that was asked a little earlier, even a little bit more in depthly. So Retain archives Android, Blackberry, and iOS, and it does it a little differently for each platform. So for Blackberry, we tie directly to the Blackberry Enterprise Service, and we're going to pull down those logs and bring them to life. So we're going to take the phone call logs on BlackBerry, BBM protected, PIN messages, text messages, and multimedia messages. And we're going to pull them all down directly from the BlackBerry Enterprise Service. So on the BlackBerry, it looks seamless to the users. They don't know that that's being pulled down. They don't have to install an app. They don't have to do anything. It's just pulled down. This is ideal, and as we know, BlackBerry is ideal for a corporate issue device, right? They're super secure. They're really good for regulated industries, and we can tie directly to BlackBerry Enterprise Service to pull those messages down. Next, you have Android, and we actually do it in two different ways for Android, and I'll talk about that. But first, the simplest way to do it is we take an app and we put it onto the Android device, and it pulls everything down from that device. So all phone calls, all text messages, and all multimedia messages on the Android device. Once again, this is an ideal solution for corporate issue devices. So if you have Androids that you're giving to your employees, Retain Mobile has that app that can pull everything down. So phone call logs, text messages, and multimedia messages from the Android device. For iOS, what we do, because Apple has locked everything down, the only way we can get to messages, well, we can't get to the native messages. We can't archive iMessage, and we can't archive the phone call logs with that Apple has on the iPhone. However, what we do is we have dual persona. I touched on that a little bit, where we place an app, and we partner with a company called CellTrust. We place an app onto the iOS device. That app doesn't require a separate SIM card to be able to provide, and it provides a separate phone number, and that we call it a mobile business number. And with that mobile business number, an employee can call and can text, and Retain ties directly to that app, to the CellTrust secure line, and it pulls that information down into Retain, and now you have oversight on that. So anything done via that app is archived. The other thing that's great too with the CellTrust app is that if I'm communicating and I'm a CellTrust user and I'm calling or texting another CellTrust user, that's all encrypted, and it's done via the CellTrust secure line servers, and it's so this is great for, say, healthcare or other organizations that need to be able to send information that's encrypted and secure within the network. The CellTrust app allows you to do that, and then it's all archived in Retain. Now, once something goes outside of the network, so if I'm texting somebody, once it hits the carrier, now it's no longer encrypted, but we still have that oversight and we can still archive that. So that's the dual persona, and that's the only way we can do that on iOS. However, that can also be done on Android. And so if you have employees that are bringing their own iPhone or they're bringing their own Android, that dual persona is the ideal situation for them to be able to keep their personal items personal, and the business stuff can be archived and have that oversight. So that is really how mobile archiving works. And the overview, one thing I did want to make mention of is all that communication, all that data that we're talking about is archived into that same central archive with email and with social media. And you have that same oversight and those same tools to be able to search and perform e-discovery on those messages as well.
Great. We actually had another question. I think you already answered this, but let me ask it again just in case. Asking about if it captures call logs, just the call logs or the actual voice media as well.
So at this current iteration of Retain Mobile, it is just the call logs. We can pull down the call logs on Blackberry via Bez and on Android via that app that we place. Now, CellTrust is in the process of being able to have a version of their CellTrust secure line that actually captures the voice, or excuse, yeah, that allows us to capture the voice call logs, but that's coming. So that, as it currently stands, we do not do that, but that is something that is on the roadmap that will be coming soon, and that's the ones done via CellTrust only.
All right. Thank you. So let's, I guess, mobile, awesome. How about social media? What does Retain do with social media?
So yeah, to kind of round this out, we talked about email, we talked about mobile. So let's finish it up with social media. So what Retain does is we've actually partnered with a company called Archive Social. And what Archive Social does is it captures the full resolution pictures, videos, GIFs, and other data formats. It allows for alerting on keywords, questions, and personal identifiable info, and it connects to social media accounts without the login info. So what that means is that instead of you as an IT or people in your IT department collecting social media accounts and having to log in to be able um, to capture that information, all you have to do is have somebody logged into the social media account. You give them a URL or access to Archive Social, and now it authenticates to their social media account and it pulls everything down. And that all that information is pulled down whether they're on or off the network. And so this is ideal for corporate social media accounts to be able to pull everything down, and then any official social media accounts. So say if you're in government, you have the mayor who has a social media account that he's pushing out. That's a situation where you'd want to archive that account. Now, what Retain does is we tie directly to Archive Social to be able to pull what they capture and pull it into Retain, so that now you can search and you can perform e-discovery and you can have that in the same central archive with your email and mobile communication data. Makes it ideal for having that oversight on your social media data. So that once again, that kind of completes the puzzle of what we're talking about, is being able to have complete oversight on your electronic communication, social media being the last piece there.
How does Retain help with the e-discovery, the back end litigation and all of that stuff?
Good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show a quick demo, but before I do that, let me just show a couple of things that I will show this in just a minute. But here's an example of the search. And so like I touched on in the very beginning, the most important part of your archive is, yes, you need to have it and you need to control your data, but you need to be able to get to your data. And so we've given you tools to be able to quickly and easily access your data. With those built-in e-discovery tools. So if I do a search, once I type in 3 letters, it's going to start to auto-suggest items that are in the archive, and it's going to highlight those items within the results of the search, making that search even that much easier. And then, of course, we have, as I touched on before, that unified archive. It doesn't matter what the email, or excuse me, what the message is, whether that's email or Facebook or Twitter or an instant message like through Skype for Business or a text message, it's going to be the results are going to come across into that one central search. So you do one search and it's going to bring in all messages, and that's the example here is of that unified archive. One thing I won't show today is that archive app is this is placed onto an Android or an iOS device to be able to access the archive from a mobile device. And then what we call the offline viewer, the standalone archive viewer. This one's great, and I won't demo this either today, but this one is amazing to be able to give a subset of the archive off to an outside team. So let's take, for example, that you do a search and it's about a certain case or a certain project, and you want your legal team to be able to have that, but you don't want them to access the full archive. You can take that search, the results of that search, you can export it to this standalone archive viewer. You can place that on a portable media like a DVD or a jump drive and hand that off to that team. It's fully indexed, so now that team can search it again. They can export that to PST or PDF directly from that standalone archive viewer, and now they're prepared for an audit or for litigation. So let's jump into the retained system really quick. Going to bring this screen over. So let's see. Let me start off. I talked a little bit about user rights. Oh, logged me out. That's okay. We'll get back in. So I talked a little bit about user rights, and so let's just look at some of the users here. So you can grant different rights to different users. So here's an example of an administrator and all the rights that they have. So here's some administrator level rights: being able to access reporting, be able to access the audit logs. I'll show that in a minute. Being able to use the deletion manager, which that's a great feature that I didn't touch on, and that's the ability to go back to the email system. And once an item is archived, you can actually set that up to have retain trigger the email system to delete that message once it's been archived. So it automatically does that, and you don't have to worry about that. Then ability to place litigation holds, manage the server, publish messages, restore messages, search all mailbox, etc. And then users have the ability to have certain rights as well. They can if you allow them to, you can have them export messages, you can have them forward messages, delete. You can have them restore as well. Those are things that you can give to user levels. Let's see if I've got a user so we can kind of see. So like this user has no rights. So what all that this user can do is access their archive and browse it. They're not able to export or even restore, but you can give them those rights. So that's important, and that's one of the powerful features of Retain is being able to have different users and rights within the archive. Okay, so let's go into auditing, because this is really important for those who are in regulated industries, is being able to see who has accessed the archive and what they've accessed. I'm just going to do a search for the past month to see who's accessed what and what they've done. So you can see here that we're able to see what everyone has done. So it looks like today this user went in and changed a group, logged in. This looks like everything I've been doing. You can see other things that have been going on. There was something archived, but the idea here is that you can view and see everything that's been happening in your archive, and this is essential to be able to be compliant and have a fully complete and compliant archive, is being able to view that auditing. Another thing I wanted to make mention of is this ability to monitor your archive and be able to see what's been going on. With this being a demo, it doesn't look like we have too much that's being archived right now, but you can see like what's been happening, how single instance storage has helped reduce the size of your archive footprint, the disk usage, the CPU usage. This is a great thing that's built into Retain to be able to see what's going on with your archive. And then another thing I wanted to make mention of is this idea of a litigation hold. So there's a couple of ways that you can place items on litigation hold. You can place a hold on an entire user's mailbox. So I could go in and I could find a user. So this is somebody using GroupWise. Let's see if one of these pull up. and I can place a hold on that entire user's mailbox. So we'll say Elizabeth Bart. I could now place her entire um, mailbox on hold so that I must have missed something there, but so that oh, I didn't add it. But anyway, so that anything that she gets, anything that she emails, anything that's archived will never be deleted until I take that hold off. So even if it reaches the policy, so Retain does policy-based archiving. So say you can set up a policy that's anything older than 30 days is archived, and then it stays in the archive for 7 years. Once it hits that 7 years, Retain deletes it off automatically. Well, if it's on litigation hold, this mailbox, it will not do that. It will stay on there forever. Um, and so you can place an entire mailbox on hold, or you can do it per message or per search. And I'll show that in just a minute. Um, so let's go into the search in Retain, and you can kind of see that what I was talking about, that ability to, once you start to type in 3 letters, you'll notice that it auto fills in with some suggestions that are in this archive, and then it's going to highlight those terms in the search results. The other thing that I wanted to show you is you can drill down and specify exactly what you're looking to see. Tasks, notes. Let's just go and see if there's anything that's. So there's some chat messages. It looks like this is a Facebook conversation that was going on. You can see like wall posts, like there's a Facebook post that's done there. You could see like some pin messages for BBM. So here's phone messages. So you can really drill down and be able to see the different items that would be in that search result. And like I said, you have that unified archive that everything comes across. Now from here is where you'd be able to do some of those e-discovery things, like being able to place a litigation hold. I could place everything on this on litigation hold, so those will never be deleted unless I take that hold off. You could place these in a confidential state, so only those with named rights could access them. You could tag these messages, and you can actually have confidential or other customizable tags. You could delete them if rights are granted. You could forward them, export them. That's where you could export to PDF or PST or that standalone archive viewer, and then you could restore them back to the live mailbox. Talking email messages, and here you can print as well. So that's a little bit about the ability to do e-discovery. There's also an advanced search which allows you to create inquiries and save them as well. So you could do something by, I want to see anything from a recipient that includes a certain phrase. You could say I want to see all types of messages from a certain type. I want to see all my litigation holds. I want to be able to, let's just say, I don't think I have any right now. Oh, I do. So I want to be able to see everything that's in litigation hold, and you can save that query. You could share that with others. You can load queries that have been saved directly from there. So you have the ability to have this advanced search to be able to quickly and easily get to your archive data. And that's what's so important, right? Is being able to get to your data. It's more than just having it. You need to be able to get to it. So that's an overview there of some of the e-discovery tools within Retain. That was a long a long answer for that question, but I hope you can see the power of Retain and how it can help you be able to manage your data and quickly and easily get to that data.
Awesome. The e-discovery tools are really powerful, and we get a lot of reference to that in some of the analyst papers and kind of awards that Retain's gotten. Anyway, speaking of that, so how is Retain different from other archiving solutions, Q?
To just kind of summarize what we talked about, these are kind of the 8 key features that make Retain different, is being able to have that multi-platform mixed environment archiving. So being able to support multiple email systems simultaneously, being able to support mobile and social media at the same time. Also, we make it flexible. You can have Retain as an on-prem solution, or we have 3 different options for you to be able to archive in the cloud. We have a private cloud. We have a cloud that's hosted via our partners, our cloud partners, and those are geographically located, so that's strategically located depending on where you're at and what your needs are. And we can also host it in AWS. Another thing is that flexible archive access is being able to allow your end users to browse their personal archive, being able to give administrators the access to the entire archive via those different ways like the web interface, the email plugin, etc. That intelligent archiving so that nothing is lost and it's all archived, that's important as well. The built-in e-discovery tools are one of the ways that we're very different from the marketplace. Is we give you those as included. You don't have to get a third-party tool or do an add-on there. And then the tagging is something that's important, is being able to have messages tagged as they're archived, or once they're archived, you can go back and tag them, and those are all customizable. They're smart tags, and you can base them on rules as well. That migration that I talked about, being able to move email systems when you need to. We also have partnered with a company called TDS to be able to give you archive migration. So if you're going to move to retain, we make it easy and straightforward path to move your archive data from your current archive into retain. And then one other thing we do that's unique is we have the ability to connect to your file systems. So we don't archive files, we focus on the communication data, but if you do have a file system with an index, we can connect retain to that so that when you do a search from retain, it's going to be able to pull in results from that file system, say like a SharePoint or another enterprise content management system. So that's another thing that makes retain different from other archiving solutions. So this is kind of, there's a lot more, but these are kind of the key things that make retain different. Is that, and really overall arching to all this is just that ease of use for your end users and administrators to get to your data.
We do have another question, Q, about the e-discovery stuff. Someone asked, does retain allow you to redact?
Oh, I'm glad you said that. That is absolutely included. So when you export information, you need to be able to redact that, and that's something that is unique to retain. Is we do have those tools built in, so that when you export, if you're preparing that information for litigation or an audit or whatnot, you can redact information that doesn't need to be part of the public record or part of the litigation case. So yes, that is a built-in part of retain, and part of the e-discovery tools is to be able to redact information. Great question, but yes, that is part of it.
Perfect. Let's see, let me double check if there are any more questions. I don't see any, but please feel free to put them in. So at this point, what are, if I'm listening to you, Q, what are my next steps? What do I do now?
So there's a few things you can do. I would say first of all is to go out and get a quote, see what this, see how this product is priced and how it can benefit you. Just that would be a really good thing that we could do, and let us win your business. Go out and we can also give you a personalized demo, see exactly how it could work in your organization. But I would suggest that is you can learn more about it at guava.com/retain or retainarchiving.com, and be able to see, learn more about how retain can work for you. We have some great resources out there about retain and some white papers about the need for archiving. But so I would do that. Learn more about retain there. Let us talk to you more about how we can help you solve these problems you may have about being able to search your archive, being able to get to your data. So that would be your next steps: is to get a quote, get a demo if needs be, and to reach out to us.
Oh, we have a tricky one here, Q, for a question. Someone's asking about our competitors, and who are our competitors, I guess.
Yeah, so there's a number of other archiving solutions that are out there. Size-wise, Veritas Enterprise Vault is probably one of the larger players in the marketplace, but they obviously they're what we like to view as a legacy archive. They're mostly focused on email archiving. They do some social media and stuff, but it's not in the same fashion. Smarsh is another one out there, and they do a lot of stuff that's similar to us in the fact that they do have an archive that has email and social and mobile. However, the e-discovery tools and the ease at which we get to your data and allow you to access that and search it built in is what would make us different from them in the marketplace. But those would be two that I would point out off the bat, as that Enterprise Vault and Smarsh are two that we see quite a bit. And But obviously, like I said, we have those differentiators that where we believe that we can win and help you be able to archive and access your data quickly and easily.
Awesome. Just let me double check. I don't see any more questions. Yeah. Just wanted to thank everybody for your time and participation today. And again, this is being recorded, and we will send that to you, that webinar link, and encourage you, like Q said, to get a quote or a personalized demo. And if you want to, learn more about how we land in the Magic Quadrant or the infotech landscape that Q talked about, or IDC, there's a lot of information about us and Retain out there. So just let us know, and we'd love to pass that along to you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here.